Good evening and welcome to Millennium Stage. And now, please welcome to the stage Becca and Piero from the Second City.
Can you all hear me? Yes, awesome.
There
Hi,
we
everybody.
go.
Welcome. I am Piero,
I'm Becca.
just in case there was any confusion. And we are from the Second City. By round of applause, how many people here have heard of the Second City before? Great. Awesome. So that's quite a few of you. Fantastic. For anyone who was not applauding or anyone just applauding out of peer pressure there. The Second City is a comedy institution, comedy theater founded in Chicago in 1959. Yes, got a few Chicagoans in the crowd. Awesome. If you don't know the theater by name, you might recognize some of our alumni, people like Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert, going back to people like Mike Myers, Tim Meadows, Chris Farley, going back farther still to that first cast of Saturday Night Live, so John Belushi, Gilda Radner, Dan Aykroyd. They were joined a season later by Bill Murray. And going back farther still, actually, even to people like Alan Arkin and Joan Rivers. So we have generation after generation of amazing comedians coming out of our theater and going on to incredible things in the comedy world. But our theater is still alive and well in Chicago. We are famous for live theater, sketch comedy, and improvisation. And we also have a training center. And we have people that travel around doing tours. So touring companies, we have crews on ships and so forth, sailing around the world doing improv and sketch comedy. So everywhere, at any time period, any time of day, you've got some sort of form of improv going on. But our roots actually go all the way back to a woman named Viola Spolin, who worked with children on the south side of Chicago at the Hull House. And these were immigrant communities where she would work with these children, teaching them these improv games. And what she found was that as they played the games, they began to work together. They began to form teams and ensembles. So the roots of our work actually come back to this idea of play and in particular, children playing together. Viola Spolin taught these games to her son, Paul Sills. He taught them to his colleagues at the University of Chicago. They went through a series of different theater groups, but ultimately, people from that group of colleagues formed the Second City, began this theater, and it has continued on until today. So, what are we here doing tonight? Well, we have in our training center a program that deals with the idea of wellness. I'm going to turn over to Becca to talk about that.
Yeah, so as Piero was saying, Second City is known for things like improv and sketch comedy. There's a lot of people that take classes that are doing it for purposes outside of just wanting to be famous, wanting to be on SNL. Sometimes people are doing it to feel part of a community. Sometimes people are doing it to work on things like anxiety, and that can manifest itself in many different forms. Sometimes it could be fear of public speaking, like I have, or it can be, that was a joke, or it can be fear of talking to people one-on-one or in groups and things like that. So we created a department at Second City called the Wellness Department to really try to think about how we can better respond to those different needs for why people would want to take improv classes. So in the time since that started, we have improv for anxiety, we have humor doesn't retire, which is improv for older adults, improv for autism, improv and yoga, improv for veterans, improv for Parkinson's, midlife crisis, when you're kind of like not humor doesn't retire but don't want to take a class with 21-year-olds, you know, that type of thing in between. And so tonight, we figured that it would be a great opportunity to teach you a little bit about improvisation, walk you through our world, and perhaps give you a little bit of a feel for how this can be applied in a wellness perspective. We might be focusing a little bit more on the anxiety part of it. So we would challenge you to be a student of your own anxiety. Think about certain things that might come up for you in the process and how it might apply to the outside world in that way. Just a quick story that I really love when it comes to improv. There's two female improvisers in Chicago named Susan Messing and Rachel Mason. And there's a story where Susan walked into a scene and she said, "I'm so glad that we're at this Starbucks today." And Rachel said, "Oh, okay." And granted, in that moment, she could have said, "I think you meant Starbucks, not Starbooks," but instead she said, "Oh yes, Starbooks, that's that offshoot of Starbucks, right? It's got this type of thing and that type of thing," and she made that mistake into something that was really beautiful. And I think that's what we're going to focus on today as well, knowing that out of those mistakes and out of the things that might feel like mess-ups, we can actually create things that are in fact more interesting than what a scene about Starbucks might have been. Before we get started, let's just do a brief introduction of ourselves.
Oh, sure. So I've been working for the Second City for over a decade now in a variety of capacities. So I've done everything from teach to perform. I have done some work on these cruise ships sailing around, to directing in our touring companies, and facilitating workshops for Second City Works, which is our corporate division. But before that, I got my undergrad degree in biology and neuroscience. I graduated, promptly moved to Chicago to study improv. My parents were thrilled. But what I found was that many of these tools that I was learning at night in classes were carrying over into how I operated during the day. And that's really actually kind of central to our point of view as well, which is that we learn by doing. So because I was exercising these muscles or these parts of my brain at night, it started to affect my behavior during the day. And we believe that that's really true, that that's what happens.
Yeah, so I am an alum of the University of Maryland. I don't know if anyone else is There's a group over here. Yeah, awesome. And so I was in the improv group at Maryland called Erasable Inc. with a C, because that's very clever, yeah. And also was part of a peer counseling and crisis intervention center on campus, and started realizing that a lot of the skills that were helpful in peer counseling actually were coming from the improv that I was doing. So I also moved to Chicago. I got a master's in social work, and then just started figuring out ways to put those things together to figure out how we can utilize improv as a means for teaching people about themselves, using it as an intervention, and helping us in how we can better connect with one another.
Great. So what is going to be happening tonight? Well, we're hoping to bring you a very interactive experience, which means that you all will be improvising in your seats and with each other. And the way that this will work is we'll introduce you to an exercise. We'll give you some instructions about what to do. And after the exercise, we'll check in with you about your experience and then talk about how some of those ideas connect to our world. So with that in mind, knowing that you all are going to be improvising, how many people, by show of hands, are a little bit nervous about the fact that you're going to be improvising this evening? Great. Thank you for your honesty. Yes, improv is a little bit, certainly more than a little bit nerve-wracking, right? The idea of getting up with nothing and the promise of creating something from that nothing. What we believe is that improv comes down to two components, taking risks and supporting those risks. And it's much easier to start from a place of support, so that's what we're going to ask you to do. For tonight, we're going to ask you to try on creating that space of unconditional support for the next hour or so. And we're going to do that. One of the ways that we do that is through uproarious applause. So I'm going to give you all a chance to practice that right now. On the count of three, we're going to burst into uproarious applause. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes. Not bad. Good, good. I was going to have you do it again, but that actually, you nailed it. You hit it.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. So with that in mind, what I'd love to do is invite someone up on stage to help demonstrate how easy improv is by answering a few questions. And I would love for that person to be someone that raised their hand if I asked if you were a little bit nervous. Do we have a volunteer? You got to volunteer yourself. If I see you pushing someone else, you're a volunteer.
Yeah.
Come on up.
Yeah,
yes.
please come up.
Yeah, keep that applause going. Yes. Hi, come right on up. Hi, what's your name?
My name's Adam.
Adam. Hi, Adam. Great. We're going to have you speaking to that microphone.
Adam.
This is Adam, everybody. Awesome. So Adam is going to answer some questions, and that's Adam's job. Your job is to respond to all of Adam's answers with uproarious applause. Okay? So let's give it a chance to practice that right now. Again, what is your name?
Adam?
Is right! That is right! And Adam, I'm going to have you just join me right here in the center. Adam, where are you from?
I'm from Florida.
Florida is right! And Adam, you may not have noticed this, but there's a box right in front of you. It's got one of those gift top lids on it. I want you to take the lid off this box and tell us what's inside.
There's a stage inside.
A
but
stage.
It's a tiny stage.
A tiny stage is right! A tiny stage. I love it. So there's a tiny stage inside this box, and what you all may not know about Adam is that he hangs out in some very high-end crowds. He's friends with a lot of famous celebrities.
Georgetown people.
Georgetown people, some Georgetown folks. That's amazing. And with that in mind, Adam, what famous celebrity sent you this tiny stage?
Dave Chappelle.
Dave Chappelle is right. Absolutely right. And actually, Dave wrote you a little note. Do you mind just reading some of that note for us, Adam?
Don't sell it for crack.
Don't sell it for crack. Amazing. Let's give Adam a huge round of applause. We're going to let him take his seat back again. Go back to the safety of his seat there. So at its core, Adam just improvised. He trusted that what he said was right, and he moved forward from there. So that's what we're going to ask of you tonight. With that in mind, we're going to lay a few ground rules. The first rule for the next hour or so is that within the context of these exercises, everything you say is right. And I know that that's not always true in the real world. This will be a rare opportunity. And what do I mean by that? Everything you say is right. I don't mean that you're going to try to do think of the worst thing that you can say to test that theory. What I do mean is a lot of times we tend to self-censor. We tend to think, oh, I got to come up with something more clever or something more funny. This is an opportunity to trust that just whatever that normal thing that you were going to say is the right thing, and that's the next step in this process, and that the process is more important than the actual specific thing. It can't be perfect right away. We need to be able to build one line at a time. So trust that what you say is right. With that in mind, please say the first thing that comes to mind as you're improvising in these exercises. And last but not least, we're going to ask you to remove judgment of yourselves and remove judgment of each other. Between those two things, what do you think is more difficult to do? Remove judgment of yourself or remove judgment of each other?
Yeah, there's usually one person that's like others, but for the most part.
That's right. And at the same time, overwhelmingly, we do hear self quite a bit. I feel like that's often because we tend to judge ourselves before someone else gets a chance to. Also, as human beings, we tend to be really self-focused. We're focused on ourselves a lot of the time. And actually, that's one of these key principles in improv is that we learn to become and remain others-focused in high-stakes situations. It's how we are able to succeed on stage, and then that carries over into the real world. Adam, I promise you that no one was thinking that's not a tiny stage. It wasn't sent to him by Dave Chappelle. Everyone in here was probably thinking, thank goodness Adam volunteered so I didn't have to. Let's give him one more round of applause.
When it comes to improv for anxiety in particular, something we think about a lot is that very often there's things that we can feel when we feel anxious. What are some things that you might feel even physically when you're anxious? Shaky. Sweaty palms. Tired. Dizzy. What might be some of the thoughts going through our mind? I suck. I'm terrible. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. All these different things. What is it? I'm bad at basketball, for sure. I know I personally feel the exact same. I'm good at shooting, bad at ball handling skills, besides the point. But absolutely, when we feel those things and when we're thinking those things, we don't want to feel those things and we don't want to think those things. So what do we start doing? We start avoiding those things because it's like, oh, if I avoid it, then I won't have to actually feel or think those things anymore. What ends up happening is it might make us feel a bit safer, but then we might actually be inhibiting ourselves from doing the things that we actually want to do. Or we're white-knuckling through things in a way that can feel uncomfortable. So the idea behind today, and as shown by those rules that Piero was just talking about, is there might be times where we feel uncomfortable, but the idea is that we're still going to be in a space of support and trust, and that's what's going to carry us through. So with that said, find a partner that you can face, and figure out who's going to be person A and who's going to be person B.
And if you don't immediately have a partner, look around you and meet somebody new.
Yeah, true.
Feel free to get up and move if you need to.
Okay, great. So, person A, congratulations, it's your birthday. Let's give person A hand. Person A, you get to plan a party, and here's some things for your party. There is no budget. You can spend as much money as you want. You are not bound by the laws of science, reason, or morals. You can do whatever you want for this party, okay? You're going to throw out an idea to person B. Person B, you are going to respond with no because and then fill in the blank. Okay, so for example, if I were to say, for my party, I want to fly to Croatia.
No, because I'm worried about flying on planes.
Great. So it's going to go back to person A. You then will throw out more ideas. You can keep going with the idea that you wanted or shift to other things. It doesn't matter, but it'll keep going with idea, no because, fill in the blank, idea, no because, fill in the blank, until we stop you. And begin. Okay. And freeze. Freeze. Store what that experience was like, person A. Just remember what that was experience like. What that experience was like. Person A, again, it is your birthday. It's your birthday again for the second round of it. Yeah, good. We're like, cool. We're so excited. You get to plan a party. Same rules apply. This time, person B, all of your responses are going to start with yes and then you are going to add something. Okay, so it'll be idea, yes and add something, idea, yes and add something, back and forth, and begin. No. All right, give yourselves a hand. After or before? Okay. Great. So, for person A to talk about that first round, when you were hearing no because, what are some adjectives that you would use to describe that experience?
True life.
True life. Yeah, sometimes it's like, it was funny.
Good. That's good.
This guy's a drag. So it's like, it's not my problem, it's your problem, you are a drag. Yeah, absolutely. What else? Negative?
Negative.
Heavy-hearted? Yeah, it can be incredibly frustrating. It's not, some people are like, I'm too upset to talk, I don't even want to tell you about what happened, right? But it sounds like all of those experiences are pretty negative. As far as who was responsible for coming up with the party, who did all of it fall onto? It all fell onto A, exactly. Did anyone observe A's body language or tone as it was happening? Any observations about how they were being? Disappointed? Deflated? Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we notice that there's kind of two different ways that A handles the exercise. One is they start out really excited and then they kind of just droop down and by the end they're just like, I don't know, I don't care, puppet show, I don't care, right? Or the other's like, no, you don't understand, this is going to happen. Even though the exercise says that it won't, it will happen. Regardless, A has to really exert so much more energy in that situation, which can be really difficult. That second round with the yes and add something, how would you describe that? Collaborative? Awesome.
Awesome. Collaborative.
Exciting?
Exciting.
What? Worse than no?
Worse than no.
How so?
My dad added good stuff, terrible stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's a really funny, yeah. And I think that's a really great point, though, that sometimes by being more collaborative, we have to give up control.
Yep.
I remember.
I'll just repeat.
Yeah.
Your dad added some terrible stuff, is what you said, right?
Yes, exactly. And sometimes it means that some terrible stuff might be added. And I remember one time someone saying, for my birthday, I want to rent a movie. And then someone else was like, yes, and we'll invite the whole block, and it'll be so fun. And they're like, no, I just want to rent a movie, right? Like, I don't want all that other stuff. So we do have to give up control. Who was responsible for the party? Both people, exactly. I don't know if anyone noticed, but the sound in the room got a lot louder, and it sounded like people were getting more excited about it, versus when I first talked about that first round, everyone was like, yes and is literally the foundation of what improvisation is all about. It's the idea of I am accepting what you are saying, and I'm going to be building upon it. Granted, we can't say yes to everything in our lives, but we're thinking about the philosophy of yes and more so than the words, thinking about what does it mean to be open to someone's idea, and what does it mean to build on that idea. I think a lot of times when it comes to wellness, when it comes to things that we're doing in our lives, it can be very easy, and someone said like that no because sounds familiar. Sometimes from other people or from ourselves, it can be that idea of like, I can think of all the reasons why I shouldn't do this, and sometimes it can be harder to think about how can I actually do this and how might I be able to build upon this idea? How do I walk toward things that might make me uncomfortable versus walking away and not taking those chances and maybe surprising ourselves with the things that might come about with it?
Yeah, it's interesting because it really does. There's a direct parallel to a lot of the anxiety we feel in real life because of that uncertainty, right? When we're on stage, we really don't know where that scene is going to go, and there's almost like a juxtaposition between our natural tendency to want to keep ourselves safe and say no to ideas versus what actually helps the scene and ultimately helps us in terms of agreeing to the reality of that scene and moving that scene forward. So we thought we'd demonstrate this as well in our world real quick. So we're going to just do a quick scene where in this scene I will say no or negate any of the ideas or offerings that Becca makes. And then we'll compare that to a yes and round.
Yeah, so can we have a relationship between the two of us for this scene? Hairdresser?
Hairdresser is what I heard.
Hairdresser. Great, fantastic. If you could just take a seat.
Oh, there's no chair there.
Okay, well, why don't you stand right here and then you can bend down and I can just do it instead without you having to use a chair.
No, I don't know what you're doing.
I am a hairdresser, and I'm here today to make sure that your hair looks really pretty and beautiful just like you are.
You're not a hairdresser, and we are in Hawaii.
Great.
On a
Awesome.
beach.
So, what did we... Thank you so much. Comedy at its finest. So what did we notice about this scene? Confrontational. Wasn't going anywhere, exactly. It was just
going
kind of
anywhere, yeah.
stuck. Was him? I thought I was like doing a lot of stuff, but okay, sure.
I will say, from the point of view of the scene, I feel like I didn't have to do anything at all except say no. Becca had to do a lot of the work in that scene.
So let's do this again,
Yeah.
and we're going to come at it with that different perspective of that yes and philosophy. Maybe I'll make like a character too.
Oh.
Why don't you come and sit? Sorry. It didn't come out how I thought it was going to come out. How you doing today? You want to come sit in this chair?
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm very particular about my hair, please.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just thinking what we'll do is we'll just shave it off and then you don't have to worry about it
What?
anymore. Yeah, if you're worried about your hair, if we get rid of your hair, then you don't have to worry about your hair
Oh
anymore.
my gosh, this could be a whole new me. Let's do it.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. Are you going somewhere special tonight?
Yes, to my wedding.
Oh my gosh. This is going to be such a surprise for your wife.
Thank you. I know. I told her that I would. I told her that I would have a huge surprise for her at our wedding, but I didn't have anything. I was bluffing. So this will do it.
Oh my gosh, wow. Okay, cool. So, I'm clapping for myself. So, what did we notice about this one? Yeah, it told a story. It
Yeah,
was
that's
building, right? There were probably a million directions that we could have gone as far as tell me about your wife, tell me about your wedding, why do you feel nervous, all those different types of things because we were yes-anding in the process of what we were doing.
And it was
Thank
very
you.
funny. Thank you very much.
We planted her in the audience.
Someone who came knows what was important to actors. That's great. I will say, yeah, it's interesting because, again, sometimes the thing that gets a laugh initially isn't really the investment that you need for the rest of that scene, too, right? So part of Yes and is being willing to let go of some of that control and see where it goes for the sake of moving that scene forward, which is critical in our world. And then, again, where we see it apply is this idea of being willing to step outside your comfort zone, be a little bit uncomfortable for the sake of either moving forward in terms of a relationship or something that you really want to accomplish in your life.
And the way that we think about it is kind of like exercise. You can't go, there are those people that are able to just run a marathon on the first day, but otherwise also it's slowly building that trust with your ensemble and the other people that are going to support you, which allows you to feel more comfortable to take more chances, and then that can start in the classroom, and then it can start with expanding outward into other places as well, which we find to be really validating and exciting.
I'll also add in another quick anecdote that I found really interesting, which is that we did a session a little bit like this one at the International OCD Foundation conference a few years back, and got some feedback from people during that session. And during the no round, someone made the really interesting point that for them, in terms of how they were navigating their own OCD, they found that that first round was very similar to what goes on in their head a lot of the time, right? So just a constant barrage of them having to tell themselves no to things, constantly saying no to themselves, and which I thought was an interesting parallel, because I think that happens regardless. I think that happens to a lot of us in real life anyway. We tend to have an idea, get excited about something, and then tell ourselves no so that it doesn't actually transform into an actual thing that you've done. And then another person in the class made another really interesting parallel, and for them, their sort of flavor of OCD was that they had these intrusive thoughts, and so what they talked about was that whenever they had one of these thoughts, they would essentially heighten that thought. So if the thought was, oh, the devil comes in and says, pick up the knife, I would say yes, and then I jump on a unicorn and fly over a rainbow. And in essence, what they were doing, which I thought was incredible, was they were yes-anding their own intrusive thoughts to the point where they could have some semblance of minimizing those thoughts for themselves, so that they weren't so scary for them, because they had more say, they had more input into that. Into where those thoughts were going, and they could deliberately make them absurd so that they weren't actually didn't make them as fearful, which I thought was interesting.
Let's set them up for their next one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So great. So let's do another exercise. Let me ask you to find a partner, either the same person or someone new, if you're feeling particularly adventurous, if you're really taking to heart some of these lessons. Go ahead and meet that person if you haven't already. And here's what we're going to have you do. We're going to have you tell a story. And in a moment, Becca's going to give you the title of that story. But we're going to have you tell a story together. And the way that this is going to work is that you're going to have to tell that story. One person will be telling that story until I shout switch. When I say switch, the other person will immediately take over, telling that story right where the last person left off, whether it's mid-sentence, mid-word, what have you. They're going to pick up right where the last person left off, keep telling that story until I say switch again. You'll switch back, and so on and so forth. Every time I say switch, you keep telling the story, but the next person takes over where the last person left off. Cool? And the title of the story that has never been written is?
Frank the Puppy's Crazy Adventure.
Frank the Puppy's Crazy Adventure. Let me get one person in each pair to raise your hand and offer to go first. Great. You will begin. Frank the Puppy's Crazy Adventure. Begin.
Switch.
Switch.
Yeah.
Switch. 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 And give yourselves a round of applause. All right, so let's talk about that experience a little bit. What did you need to do to be successful in that particular exercise? Yeah, to make it funny over here. Say what did you say? You had to listen to the other person.
And build on whatever the other person said, I think. Yeah.
I heard a number of people say that. So yeah, this again is the embodiment of yes and. So one thing that we talk about a lot is this idea of the spirit of yes and versus the actual phrase yes and. And a lot of times there's some confusion there. When we're improvising, you may have noticed, we don't always say the words yes and. But the spirit of yes and is what's important, where we are agreeing to the reality of the other person. So even in that reality of that hairdresser scene, I might be a character who doesn't want to get their hair cut. If that's the case, that no is the character saying no, but the improviser is still agreeing to the reality of the scene. Same thing is true here, that idea of listening, really making sure that you're actively listening to the other person is so critical and really part of this idea of yes and. The other part, of course, being that you're building on that other person. Those two elements are really putting yes and into action. And the other thing that ties into all of this is this idea of what we would call being present and in the moment. And that's really important in improv. A lot of times there's a real temptation to take yourself out and start to try to think of what's funny or try to think of, worry about the crowd or am I getting laughs? And the real work comes from, the real art of it comes from being willing to sort of stay present and in the moment and just be in the scene interacting with your partner.
I have a question. So sometimes when we are having conversations with people, especially conversations that might make us anxious, when the other person is talking, what are some of the things going through our mind? Thinking of what to say next? When will this be over? For sure. Was that the answer to my question, or are you just asking about? Yeah. What else? Thinking about facial expressions, right? Like sometimes it's like, do I look silly? Do I look okay? Like, where should I put my hands? When, should I smile? All those types of things, for sure. And I think that goes to the point that Piero was making, that oftentimes in conversations, especially when we're feeling worried, it can be very difficult to just be right in that moment and just know, like, okay, I'm worried about what I'm going to say next, but maybe if I really just listen to understand what the person's saying, I might have that answer ready when it's my turn to respond. Because sometimes when we're thinking about what we want to say next, we actually stop listening because we start getting worried about stuff. And when we talk about improv, we're talking about the art of being others-focused. I'm going to be in the moment, I'm going to think about you, think about what's needed in this conversation, and respond accordingly, which can be very difficult, and as we talked about earlier, is a muscle to really start developing, especially when it is our tendency first to kind of think a little bit about other things that can be going on simultaneously at the same time in our heads. So we would challenge you in conversations to say, all right, I'm going to listen to the entirety of what someone's saying, really just try to be a good support in listening, and see if I may be able to respond accordingly to what they're saying.
Great. So we're going to move you into another exercise, I think.
Yeah. So turn back to your partner, and this time you are going to be telling a story. Can I have a noun, a person, place, or thing? Asparagus, fantastic. And can I have an adjective, a word to describe the noun? Spicy. I heard spicy and I heard fluffy. So spicy, fluffy asparagus. Very interesting. See what we can build? Amazing. So turn to your partner, and you are going to be telling the story of the spicy, fluffy asparagus. Try saying that 3 times fast. But you will be telling the story one
word
at
a
time. Okay? Ooh. Uh-oh. Do I hear a little judgment? We said no judgment. Thanks, Frank. So look at your partner and tell the story 1 word at a time. I think I'm gonna make it bigger. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Okay, freeze. Now what you're going to do is you are going to form a group of 4. So connect with 2 other people to form a group of 4. If the way that it works, it's a group of 5 or anything, that's totally fine as well. And can I please have another noun? I heard what'd you say? Cat. Cat? Great. Cat. And can I have an adjective to describe that cat? Orange. So orange, cat. You're going to be telling the story around the circle, 1 word at a time, 1 person at a time. And go. Which is, you know what I mean. All right, freeze. All right. Yay. So now what's going to happen? We're going to stay in our groups of 4. We're going to tell another story. This time, each of you is responsible for 3 words before it's the next person's turn. Okay? So I'll give you a way that to help. Sometimes it's helpful to say like once upon, just put those fingers up. It's just helpful for me, just a little word of advice. Can I have a noun? Moon. And can I have an adjective? Man. Awesome. Woman. Okay, so I'm going to say, we're going to call this one the woman on the moon. Okay? Woman on the, yeah, right? Thank you. Praise. Okay, woman on the moon. And go. 3 words. What? Yeah. If we finish talking about this at like 6:45, I think that'll give us a good look. We'll see how long pillars last, do a Q&A, and then if you want to do hesitation, it's going to go. Oh yeah, just slash me just if you want to get up. Do you like when I start? That's not when I start again, like the bell going to style. All right, give yourselves a hand. Anyone that was really excited about the story that didn't get to, if you didn't finish it, you can always, finish it later. Actually, out of curiosity, for any of these, can someone just yell out what their story was about? Oh, hold on, one moment. How about can someone raise their hand and then I'll, yeah. Mission to the moon to steal a beautiful trench coat. I assume that was everyone's, right? Okay, how about you? So the woman on the moon was lonely, so there's a man on Jupiter who was going to take a spaceship there to keep her company. Very cool, awesome, very cool. How about one more? Yeah, how about you over there? But you got to a what? A moon dinosaur. That sounds pretty epic to me, in my opinion. So as you can see, everybody's experience was quite different, even though we had the same story. What did you need to do for this one in order to be successful? Pay attention. Listen. Use your fingers to count. You're welcome. What'd you say? Breathe? Yeah, always helpful. Absolutely. Yes, definitely. It's important to take our time and breathe and be in the moment. Absolutely. That's very true. Have fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes people are like not having fun and it ruins the exercise. It's very important to have fun. Did anyone have the feeling of just that giving up the control was a little difficult? Yeah, sometimes there's this thing, especially let's say in the four-person, it's like, I fixed it, you ruined it, you ruined it, you ruined it, I fixed it, you ruined it, you ruined it, you ruined it, I fixed it, right? That totally happens. And this is a little bit of knowing our anxiety. For us, letting go of control might be part of our anxiety. So when it comes to figuring out how to challenge that, it might be finding opportunities to make sure that we let go of control a little bit. Was anyone in the space of, oh my gosh, I can't wait to say this amazing word. I'm going to say armadillo. It's going to kill. They're going to love it. And it got back to you and it was like, and the is, right? Sometimes also we have to be more of those linking words, and that's necessary for the story. There might be some other people who are like, don't give me any of those big words. I just want to say and or the or is, or every time it comes to me, I'm going to say very, 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 right? Again, that is knowing our anxiety, knowing the things that are in our comfort zone. And the more we know about what makes us feel comfortable or uncomfortable, the more we might be able to respond to it to say, you know what? I find that at school, or I find that at work, I'm much more comfortable supporting other people, and I'm not as comfortable putting myself out there. So I want to try that a little bit more. Or it might be, I don't let anyone else have any control over things, and I do everything, and I put a lot on my shoulders so that I'm always the one making decisions. And that might be, oh, I thought he was like, I do that. And so sometimes it might be, okay, I need to give up some of that control to practice that a little bit as well. Also, as we spoke about in the beginning, we didn't speak about this, but I'm going to get to what we spoke about. We never wake up in the morning and know exactly how our day is going to go. Improvisation is what we are doing all the time. We can't begin to imagine what our day is going to give us. So sometimes also just by saying, I'm going to see how this story goes. I'm going to see where other people take it with me. Just as throughout the day, I'm going to figure out how different interactions might go, and I'm going to be open to it. And I'm going to come at it having fun, so thank you for saying that, and having a positive attitude can really make a very big difference. Anything you wanted to add for that?
No, I think that's exactly right.
Thank you.
Would you guys like to see a little bit more improv from us? Great. So what we would love to do is get a volunteer to come help us with this next improv exercise. Do you want to come up? Yeah, come on up. Let's give them a round of applause. Awesome. And what is your name? Say again. Zaki?
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 Z-A-K-I.
Z-A-K-I. Zaki. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's give Zaki a nice round of applause. So, Zaki, here's what's going to happen. Becca and I are going to be doing a scene, and at any point during that scene, we might tap you on the shoulder. And when we tap you, we want you to fill in the word of that sentence, the next word of that sentence, into the microphone. So, for example, I might say, my favorite color is?
Brown.
Brown is right. Yes, exactly right. Okay? So when we tap you, you'll fill in the word, okay?
Also, Zaki, I know you've had a rough time in the activities with the people you've been partnered with today, so it'll hopefully be a positive experience for us.
That's right. So to get us started, could we have a location that could fit on this stage? Boston. An amazingly shrunken Boston. We will take you to this scene that takes place in Boston.
So, I guess that's the Super Bowl trophy.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I just really hate the Patriots, and I hate them because they were really mean to me one time when I was just hanging out with some friends. The Patriots came to me, and they were like, do you know what? You're really
Stupid.
Stupid. And I was like, excuse me?
The whole team?
The whole
team came to
team.
you and said you're stupid?
Yeah, Gronkowski was injured and he was even there to tell me that I was stupid.
Well, I can see why you hate them then.
yeah, I'm not going on his cruise.
Yeah. I hate them for a completely different reason. I hate them because once they told me I was
Bad.
bad.
Really?
Yes, not just even stupid, but
Bad?
bad.
Well, I know that you're bad at certain things. Like, I know that you're bad at
Basketball.
basketball.
Okay,
So
yes.
maybe they were talking about being bad at basketball, or I also know you're bad at
Football.
football, so maybe they were talking about that. And
Okay.
you're also really bad at
Tennis.
tennis.
Okay,
I mean, really, sports in general
Okay,
are
let's
just
not, you know,
are not things that you're great at.
I like to, first of all, I love sports. Let's start with that. And
Okay.
secondly, there is a sport that I'm really amazing at. It's just a very unusual sport. It's
Paco. No. Pickleball.
it's Paco Pickleball.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you've never heard of Paco Pickleball,
Yeah.
but I'm the best in the world at
Really?
it.
I hear that the uniform for that, though, is really weird. Like, I hear for that uniform, you have
Yeah.
to wear
Poop.
poop. Which, to me, I'm
true.
like, I especially because it's not my own and it's someone else's, I don't really
Listen,
feel comfortable with that.
This is exactly the point. If you're a real athlete, you're willing to go that extra mile.
Sure.
Scene! We'll call it there.
Yeah.
Let's give Zachy a big round of applause! Thank you, Zachy. I'm going to return you to your seat then.
From Patriots to Poop, the improv story.
It's our memoir.
Awesome. You did such a great job. So,
Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, what a great job. So as you can see, I mean, when we go on stage, before we come on stage, we always let each other know that we have each other's back. And with that, it helps the anxiety go down because we know that no matter what happens, the other person is going to take care of us on stage, which can be a really nice thing to feel.
Yeah, it is also, I mean, it really starts to shift that mindset, that sort of heightened heartbeat, that blood pressure stops being so much anxiousness and turns more into excitement. It really reframes that into something where you start to look forward to these experiences as, because you're looking for the opportunity, not terrified of what's going to happen.
I actually thought that Paco Pickleball was a perfect example of, I'm assuming it was piccolo ball, right? Like maybe that sport. But because it turned into Paco Pickleball, it became a new sport and a sport with a very interesting uniform. So how fun is it to explore something different that might have seemed like a mistake or hesitation in the moment that actually ended up being, for me, the highlight of the scene. I know, I'm sorry.
For other people, maybe not.
So we just have a few minutes before we wrap up, and we were wondering if anybody had any questions about wellness, anxiety, how we do the program,
Yes.
things like that. Yeah.
I just could imagine this to be an incredible program for people who are incarcerated and only have each other, but can yet break out of their confines by doing this type of program. Is that something that's done?
That's a really interesting point. Yeah.
I'll
Please
just
take
repeat it. I'll just repeat it. So I'll paraphrase. You're saying that you imagine this to be an excellent program for people who are incarcerated who have each other to sort of have each other to build off of and learn these skills with each other in that context. There are programs like that. I don't know that we have one. I don't know that Second City has a program like
Yeah.
that. But Chicago is certainly full of improvisers, improv theaters. And I do know, I happen to know of a number of programs that have done that have taken improv into jails.
The other thing that we find is that they say that truth in comedy. It's the idea of being authentic, not trying to look for the joke, but more just sharing who you are and being really honest about that. And so there are programs also that work with people who are incarcerated to have them tell their stories and turn it into theater and have that outlet to share their experiences, which can be such an incredible thing to witness as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you guys talk about some other like specialized groups that you've worked with? Like you talked about the World OCD group that you worked with. Are there any other groups that you've worked with and some experiences from that?
Yeah. So,
Do you want to just repeat the question? Real
oh
quick?
yeah, sure. So the question was, we had presented at the OCD conference, are there other populations of people that we have worked with before, whether it be at a conference or perhaps just as an audience or things like that? Yeah, I think that the programs that we do at Second City within themselves are always so fascinating as far as the differences that can come up. I mean, Humor Doesn't Retire is my favorite class I've ever taught, because when we say, okay, you're going to be doing a word at a time story, who's it about? And it's like, Frank Sinatra, great. Like, that's just so fun and exciting. We have also presented at the Anxiety Depression Association of America. We've done things with the American College Personnel Association. And also we started doing things like improv for clinicians and teaching social workers and therapists how to better connect with their clients, how to better be in the moment. Sometimes we can walk into scenarios and think that it's going to go a particular way and it goes a completely different way, so how do we adjust? Also working with surgeons on things like bedside manner, where there's a lot of times where surgeons will say, okay, well, we did an incredible job, but our patients weren't happy. And it was like, yeah, because maybe you didn't make them feel comfortable in the room. So how do we also understand the emotions of the people that we're interacting with to create that safe space as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of this certainly derives from the fact that Second City's Training Center has been around for several decades at this point, and prior to the wellness program, and that would happen. So people from all walks of life would start coming in and taking these introductory improv classes, and have these incredible backstories, and make these connections to, oh wow, this is really relevant in terms of what I do, or this is really relevant in terms of this area over here. It really sort of inspired us to start to look at improv in that way, combined with, of course, the fact that that its roots really go back to this idea of how do we encourage people to work in groups, how do we help teach people these social skills.
I think also when it comes to anxiety, it can be such an isolating thing to go through that a lot of people, when they walk in the first day of class, they say, I know I'm the most anxious person here. And there's a lot of times, too, where we're not showing it on the outside. So we might feel like it's so clear what's happening internally, but it's not. And so there are top professionals, in the working world that are really, really struggling internally, and to have that space to just be honest about that and to share with other people can be such a wonderful experience. I know with my college improv group, when I finished college and suddenly started having to meet new people and not have that embedded trust, I panicked a bit, because it was like, for so long I've just felt like I can say and do anything and it's going to be fine. And now it's like, oh no, will I be okay? And I've never found anything in the same way that I had from that initial experience. Yeah. Oh,
yeah, right here and then over there. Yeah.
You, yeah.
Okay, which game do you find elicits the most interesting or self-reflective outcomes?
So I'll repeat. Which game do we find elicits the most interesting or self-reflective outcomes? Is that what you said? Good question. That's a tough one, only because, at least from our perspective, almost any of the games that we do are windows into any of these skills, right? So I would suggest that in my experience as a teacher, as an instructor, different games resonate with different people. For myself, I love games like the one that we played up here with Zaki, where truly anything can come out and that can go anywhere. But I definitely, as an instructor, have seen different people suddenly connect with different games and say, oh my gosh, now this makes sense to me.
Yeah, there's one game where you have to make up a joke on the spot that we usually do toward the end of group. And I love that because I think it's the type of thing where people are like, I could never do that. And so any game that also pushes someone for them to surprise themselves, and maybe before they were like, I'm not the type of person who can do blank, and suddenly it's like, whoa, I just did that. Especially with teens. Sometimes our teens will be like, I couldn't possibly do this. And then a minute later, they're playing a game that is having them do that, is a really exciting experience for us. I think we have time for maybe one more.
Yeah, one right here. Oh, sure. Thank you. So if I'm hearing that right, and then we'll get to your question as well. If I'm hearing correctly, you said that I'm listed as a director, and you're curious what that means when you're talking about improv. Is that right? Yeah, is it like being the driver of a driverless car? I think is what you said. Yes, a little bit. So we treat, one of the things that people do laugh about is like we have improv rehearsal or improv practice, and people are like, "What do you mean? You're practicing improv? What are you doing?" We treat it a lot like a sport, really, in the sense that you can never tell exactly what's going to happen in that game, but when you get together, you can still practice the skills that you're going to use when you are when it comes to game time, right? So when in terms of improv, that's really the director's role, is to help see where that group is going, see where their learning process is, help develop some of those skills so that they keep getting better and better and better when they take the stage. The other role that directors fill at Second City is that we use improv to create sketch comedy. So we take improv and then we write scenes based on what we've improvised. So in that context, the director kind of acts as head writer. So you're taking ideas for scenes, you're watching them from the outside, and you're tweaking those scripted scenes based on what you see on stage.
Thank you. So we have some family members who suffer from pretty profound anxieties. So based on this wonderful past hour, how do we apply the lessons we just learned with these family members? I mean, starting tonight, what do we do?
Ooh,
Sure.
Great question. That's a good last question, too.
Yeah, I think sometimes to go back to those ground rules that we set in the beginning, to say trusting your instincts, everything that you say is right, and that anything you bring to me, I'm going to be grateful that you brought that to me. I find that sometimes I work with people with anxiety directly, and sometimes I might ask a question and they say, I don't know, and I'll be like, just remember, anything that you say is going to be absolutely right, and just that reminder will push them to be more comfortable doing it. Or I'm stressed about the time because we only have a minute, so we could also talk afterwards if you want to check in about it a little bit. But I also think it's that idea of when we don't put ourselves out of our comfort zone, we can stay in a space that feels very safe but can sometimes feel flat, and then we don't feel the lows, but we're not feeling the highs either. So sometimes to provide that support to say, like, we love you, we are your family, and we're going to be with you as you take some of those chances to hopefully feel some of those highs, we're going to be on board with you for that, and just know that we'll hold your hand through it in whatever way that we possibly can.
Yeah, I'll just add to that and say that I think sort of two levels to this. Number one, feel free to try these games at home, and that goes for anyone sort of watching on the screen as well. Do a game of telling a story a word at a time. That can start to introduce this point of view. And secondly, just to build on what Becca said, really it's the idea of acceptance and accepting the highs and the lows at the same time. So with that,
We're at 7.
we
So
thank you very
all
much.
so
Thanks,
much.
everybody. Thank you. Thank
Wave
you.
to the
Thank you very